On your big horses, flat-footed horses, draft horses, horses with a lameness situation, it's best to work on one side at a time, or a diagonal, meaning I'll work on the front and back of this side, get those done, and then move to the other side. If they have good solid hooves, sound horses, by all means pull all four shoes and go around the horse. By leaving a couple of shoes on and getting one side done, you'll give the horse some additional comfort. When I'm picking this limb up, I want it in as natural of range of motion as I can get it, so I'm turning myself out, keeping that limb underneath the horse, and when I'm cutting the clinches, I'm using a urethane hammer. We spend more and more on our nailing hammers, and this saves that nailing hammer. Another thing is that you don't have so much concussion on the horse. When I'm pulling that shoe, I'll use the pull-offs, which are rounded. I'll pry between the shoe and the heel, at the heel of the hoof, and pull back on that viable heel. Move to the other side, pry between, pull back just to loosen that up. I'll hit the shoe down and pull those nails out individually, those that I can get. That way I'm not disturbing more of the hoof wall. And when I pry that shoe off, be gentle, because the sole is not always necessarily thick and we can injure the horse. I'm going to pry down and towards the toe, gently, to pull the last part of the shoe off. Then we'll use a hoof pick, picking down towards the toe. Use a hoof brush, brush that out. That saves the knives that we spent so much time sharpening. I'm going to find a parameter at the point of the frog. Right there, so we have uniform tissue texture between the frog and the sole. Means I don't have a lot of sole. Be careful how much you take off. I'm going to clean up the bars. And I'm just going to clean the rough spots off of that sole without reducing it to a very thin state, which could compromise any horse. This is the only protection that horse has against the environment, Mother Nature, the gravel driveway. And we're not paid to by the pound to take it off, so let's leave some. We're just going to tidy up that frog. And clean out the central sulcus here. Take that off. Get the rest of the dirt removed out of there. And now I have a trail to follow with my nippers. I start at one heel and follow that trail around to the other heel. And before I go further, I'm just going to take a minute, set that hoof down, and reevaluate as the hoof is on the ground. And what I'm evaluating is hoof pastern axis. How is the hoof compared to the pastern? I'm going to look at the hairline to see if I have one point that's higher than another. And I'm going to look at that from the front. And from the back. I'm looking at the bulbs of the heels. And once I've defined that, I can make adjustments with the rasp. But before that, I'm going to get a more uniform wall thickness. with the nippers. And the uniform wall thickness is measured from the outside of the live sole to the outside of the wall. So we'll point that out. Right here, the live sole ends right here. The outside of the wall is here. I get it as uniform as I can around there. I'll finish that up with the rasp. Most of our horses have about a 3/8 inch thick wall. That's average. You might be working on thoroughbreds that have much less hoof wall, or another breed of horse that has a very thick hoof wall. We use that traditionally to define the width of web of the shoe we're going to put on. And the width of web would be twice the thickness of the hoof wall. So if we have a 3/8 inch hoof wall, the traditional stock width would be 3/4. Horses have their best hooves between about 4 years old and 8 years old. And with time they become a little bit smaller, a little bit tighter. That's exactly what's happening to this horse. Because of pathologies or because of trauma. It's a little fungal issue right there. It's an anaerobic fungi, so getting air to it really helps out. Here's some dirt and debris packed into this heel. All right, I'll set it down and reevaluate again. When I look at that, I feel that the hoof wall is just a little bit longer on the outside toe quarter. And so I'll go back and just brush that a little more. Well, I'm not going to get every hoof exactly as I please. I'm going to make an effort to get them as close as possible. And if in doubt, if you're in doubt as to whether you can take a little more, don't. Our primary goal is to leave the horse better off than when we came. We'll do the best we can now. If there's more we can do next time we see the horse, we'll do more. And especially in a mature horse, you want to make your changes, if you're making changes, conservatively and often. So if this horse has had an 8-week schedule, we might shorten it up to 7 or 6 to help the horse out. And when I get done, I draw up a line straight down through the frog this way. I'm bringing my heels back to a uniform distance. It means that my inside heel needs to be brought back just a little more. I'll check again to see how flat I have it, make adjustments, make corrections. And I'll just relieve the sole so that we have no shoe resting on the sole, as that could compromise the integrity of the sole, put pressure on it, and create a lameness situation for the horse. Once I have that done from the solar surface or from the bottom, then I can pull that limb forward and put it on my hoof stand and rest down to the parameter that I have achieved from the solar surface. Using a hoof stand takes a great deal of stress off of me. It also takes stress off of the horse and often allows them a greater comfort and stability, and they'll stand better. I'm grasping down to that parameter I set on the solar surface and not beyond. And this is going to give me a uniform wall thickness so that when I put the appropriate width of stock on there, my nail line is going to end up in the white line or insensitive tissue of the hoof. So if we look from this angle, look down this limb when the horse is standing square, his abaxial rotation, if you see the knee, the flatness of the knee is pointing out, abaxial rotation. When we got done trimming that way, I'm sure we can do it. We can stand up there, buddy. I know you want to help me out. But the hoof now appears straighter than it did before. And just take another look at the other foot, the abaxial rotation. And let's go and do the same thing to that one. And we'll see if we can assist that in looking straighter than it did before. Have I changed the limbs? No. Will I change the limbs? No. This is the way that horse is put together. But because of the forces applied upon that hoof, there's deviations within the hoof capsule that I'm adjusting because they're created by the horse's conformation. My job or my discipline as a farrier, I have a particular stance. And so I'm standing a lot with a hoof between my legs and wearing the outside. If you look at my shoes, I've worn more on the outside corner than I have on the inside corner. Because of a horse's discipline or because of its conformation, it'll do the same thing. If I don't regularly resole my shoes or buy some new ones, it's going to create issues all the way up through my limbs into my lower back and eventually headaches. And the same thing can happen to horses. We're looking at the whole horse. It's not just what I do, it's what the veterinarian, the chiropractor, the physical therapist, everybody working in combination to help this horse out to do to its best of ability. And I have to start with applying shoes appropriately and to the conformation, discipline, environment of this horse. I'm going to pick the hoof up, put it between my legs in the natural range of motion, using the clinch cutter. I'll straighten or cut those clinches off using the urethane hammer. Using the pull off, I'll pry between the heel of the hoof and the heel of the shoe and pry back on the viable hoof wall. I'll hit that shoe down and then pull as many nails as I can independently. If I have a hard time, I can go with another tool called a crease nail puller and reach in there and pry that nail down and out. This is especially important in a horse that has a very thin sole or a very sore sole. Pull those nails individually. Even a horse that has a compromised hoof wall, this will retain the integrity of the hoof wall. Using the hoof pick, picking down towards the ground, Clean out the collateral sulcus, the central sulcus, the dirt around the wall. Then I'll use the brush to continue cleaning that. I'll establish a parameter at the point of the frog. I have uniform tissue texture. It gives me an indication as to how much I have. If I run into this rather quickly, it tells me that the horse needs the protection it has, not to remove a great deal. I'll clean up around the bars, get this dirt out. You can see some stress has been in this bar from that hemorrhaging that took place as that bar was growing. Some distended laminae here. I'll clean up the collateral sulcus of the frog. Central sulcus. And work on getting the last of the dirt out of there. Using the nippers, I'll start at one heel, following my trail. This hoof has a lot of dorsal hoof wall or hoof wall on the toe. So I'll tip my nippers up and take some of that off. Here's a, looks like an abscess tract. You can see some drainage right there. We'll clean that up some more. I'm going to take some of this dorsal hoof wall off because we want a uniform wall thickness. This has been compromised either by an impact, trauma, or from dirt packing up in there. It's important that I clean that out so that it doesn't continue. It's very soft. We're getting close to sensitive tissues right there. I'll have to take a spot right out of there. All right, so that that's drained. And I'll reevaluate when the hoof is on a flat surface. I'm going to look from behind and look at the heel height. I'm going to look from the side. And I'm going to look from the front. It's so important that the farrier has an appropriate environment to work in. If you're working in a barn alleyway that has a trench in it, no light shining through the light bulb that's above you, it's very difficult to do an appropriate job. In that situation, it may be necessary to transport the horse to an environment that is conducive to quality work. Another thing is the horse's training. It's important that the horse can stand, is used to the process, and is a safe animal to be around. And then I'll make sure that the sole is relieved. And pull that foot forward so that we can clean up the outside of the hoof wall. Bring it back to the parameter I've set from the solar surface. And I'm constantly reevaluating, looking at the hairlines, looking at the heel angles, looking at the toe angles, looking at the fetlock through the pastern, through the hoof, to see if I have a similar angle. And watch the horse constantly, because every time the horse sets its foot down in a different position, the angles that you see are going to be different. And the hoof wall is soft tissue. That changes according to the stresses applied upon that. Well, I take the shoes off and relax that hoof. The hoof changes dramatically in a short amount of time. And in just a few minutes, you'll see changes to that hoof. And while there's no shoes on there, I'm going to adjust and change what I've done to accommodate for those changes. I felt I had a little greater height in the inside toe quarter when I set the hoof down, so I'm just going to adjust that slightly now.